Welcome back to the Createch stage where creativity meets technology at the CogX Virtual Festival for AI and Breakthrough Technologies. I'm Janet Hull and I represent the UK Creative Industries Council, a community of leaders who together seek to safeguard, support and promote the UK creative industries both around the UK and on the global stage. I'm your MC for Createch and I'm here to help you navigate this spectacular 3-day programme we've helped prepare for you. Now, this is our first year at CogX, but our 4th year of running Createch, and we're delighted that although we're the newbies, we're already the 2nd most popular stage. And yesterday, over 2,900 visitors came to see what we had to offer, and 30% of them were from outside the UK. We'd love to be number 1, so if you enjoy what you see, please share the details with your friends. Our Createch topic code to access the festival pass is still active, so go for it. CogX is all about community, and if the creative industries is the community you want to belong to, just email us at createch@thecreativeindustries.co.uk and we'll make sure to keep you posted. Please hashtag your appreciation of Createch too, using hashtag Createch and CognitionX 2020. The overall theme of CogX this year is, how do we get the next 10 years right? And for us in the creative industries, for this next session, this means, how will climate change and Covid-19 change the world of fashion? How do we reimagine the fashion industry? How can UK Createch support a sketch-to-story view of the global market? This session has been curated by the British Fashion Council, a not-for-profit organisation that harnesses the collective power of the industry to enable sustainable growth and strengthen British fashion in the global fashion economy. They've recently launched the BFC Institute of Positive Fashion. This week is also London Fashion Week, so there couldn't be a better time to be holding this discussion. Please welcome to the stage fashion journalist Tamsin Blanchard, moderator for the session.
Thank you so much, Janet. Really excited to be with you here today. And I'm really thrilled to be joined by 3 incredible guests with enormous experience between them. We are going to be joined by Frankie Phillips, who's founder, creative and sustainability director of TOBEFRANK. We are joined by Jane Shepherdson, who is the chair of MyWardrobeHQ and a Createch one to watch, and also Dax Lovegrove, who is the global VP corporate sustainability and social responsibility. That's a very long title, Dax, for Swarovski, but he's here today in his role as representative of the British Fashion Council's Institute of Positive Fashion, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that later. Welcome, panel. So there has never been a better time to reimagine the fashion design process and supply chain. Covid-19 has stopped consumption in its tracks. The knock-on effect of that is a massive bottleneck of unsold stock, both in the shops and in factories, where orders have been made and paid for in time and materials by factories from Bangladesh to Cambodia, affecting some of the most vulnerable people whose livelihoods have been put at risk. People who do not have the privilege of furlough schemes, healthcare, or even the ability to stockpile more than a day's food at a time. This pandemic has put the breaking points of the supply chain into stark focus, showing a system that doesn't work. So the one hope is that the pause in the system is offering an opportunity for accelerating change. So I want to start today with Frankie Phillips, who set up a brand, TOBEFRANK. So Frankie, can you start by just telling us a little about TOBEFRANK? And also I'm interested in who else is involved.
Yeah, so to be frank, I started TOBEFRANK because I wanted to prove that you could have a truly sustainable fashion brand that didn't come with an extreme price point. So I'd worked in sustainability for a while, and I basically, all the things I couldn't put into practice, I kind of put all into TOBEFRANK. I I've got an incredible team. So the people I've got involved, I've got Mehmet Guna, who's actually a fibre engineer. He's based in Turkey, and we work with him to create some incredible things. He's similar to me. He'd been working in fashion for a long time and had all these incredible ideas of actually how to turn it into a positive, but wasn't actually able to implement any of them. And then I've also got Nick Howe, who he moved from South Africa about 2 years ago, and his background is production, and he looks after more the logistics side of production. And then I've also really excited, because sometimes I have to pinch myself. Our chairman is actually Stephen Craig, so he's the ex-CEO of All Saints. That name is quite well known when it comes to strategic growth. And then I've also on our board, we've also got David Walker-Smith, who's the ex-buying director of Selfridges, and he is incredible, and he helps when it comes to developing the range, because when it comes to being sustainable is obviously up there, but we also need a product that people actually want to buy as well. And the reason why I had to be frank is the fact I want to basically have a frank code that we show how sustainable we are, and we're completely transparent.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. You're a startup, but you've got enormous expertise and experience on your board, and it seems as though people who have been part of this industry for a long time and who really want to see change. Can you tell us a bit more about the idea about transparency? You on your website, you have you sell a T-shirt, the To Be Frank T-shirt. And you're transparent, but all about how that T-shirt's made, but also about the pricing structure. Can you tell us a little?
Yeah, I think one of the things when it comes to being transparent is we show how our product is made. We show videos of it being made. You can see the factories and where it's produced. And I think one of the big things when it comes to the transparency side of it, which actually one of the big things why I wanted to be frank, is people say, oh, I bought this T-shirt and it's a sustainable T-shirt. How is it sustainable? And they're like, oh, I don't know, it's organic cotton. That doesn't necessarily mean that the garment is sustainable. It just means it's an organic cotton, which is a great option, but it's everything else. Like, where's the thread come from? How much are the workers getting paid? Where's it sourced from? What's the carbon footprint of that T-shirt? So that is what To Be Frank is. It has all of that, and we rate everything from, like, we've got like a frank code, which is recycled, less water, new tech, and low carbon, and we rate it that way. And then we also have our goal, the fact that we are as affordable as possible. We know how much our fibre costs. We know how much the living wages where we make our products, so we know exactly how we can cost the garment. We're not going to say, oh, this is sustainable, so we're going to add the price point. We're going to add some markup. So that's one of the things I was quite passionate about.
Mm-hmm. And do you think your customers really care in the end?
I do. I think that especially they're becoming much more aware of what's going on as well. And I think especially with what's happening with COVID, there's a lot more news stories about the supply chain being mistreated. I've had so many people contact me saying, I didn't realize this was a thing. I didn't realize this was an issue. I'm not going to shop at these shops anymore because I need to stand for something. So you're getting more and more people. When I first started being into sustainability, which was, maybe about 6 or 7 years ago when I lived in Asia, people were telling me, people don't care. People don't care when they make their clothes. Actually, when I first started To Be Frank, I actually showed at Fashion Week in 2012, and buyers and press would come to me, and the whole concept was it was see-through supply chain. I showed Mitch, the guy that stitched it together, and I showed Miranda, who actually put the buttons on, and people said, I don't care. Whereas now, I think that's changing. People do want to know where their garments come from.
Yeah, that's interesting as well that you're saying that this pandemic has made people think about it more. I mean, there have been a lot of news stories, haven't there, about the effects on the supply chain. And as a supply chain manager for high street brands in your former life, can you just tell us a few of the issues and where you think the biggest challenges are at the moment?
Well, when it came to, so I looked after production in Southeast Asia, and I basically looked after the men's and boys area. So everything it was a UK retailer, and you've got that real mix when it comes to, we're producing denim, for example, in Cambodia. You've got a lot of people in Cambodia that do not have access to clean drinking water, yet we're using gallons of water to make denim. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. And this is the same when it comes to, like, there's been an issue when I was in China, when I lived in Beijing, and we basically had it came to our attention that there was basically actually what happened was there was a terror. We got basically told by the embassy to stay inside because there was a threat to Westerners' safety where we were living. The rumor was it's because there was a group in north of China who were fed up of their lands being polluted by Western brands. This all disappeared, and I couldn't really find out anything else. But then, as time went on, I actually looked more and more into it because I became completely obsessed by what was happening. And I actually took a detour when I went on my next sourcing trip, and I went to this village that was apparently the village that threatened Beijing, and it was horrible. That is what the moment that will stay with me forever, because it was you can see pictures of pollution, you can hear stories of pollution, but until you see it, and you can see villages that used to be there but now they're not because the community could not live there anymore because it was too polluted, that will stay with you. And when it comes to producing the huge amounts of product, a lot of people kind of turn a blind eye because, okay, that they're going to produce that product and I'm just going to order it. Well, actually, no, it's the person who's ordering it. It's their responsibility to make sure that whole supply chain is safe. And while I was a production manager, I resourced the whole supply chain without telling anybody as a sustainable option, kind of as a proof that, because my argument was it doesn't need to cost more, and they didn't know about it until after it was in the store.
That's interesting that you could take responsibility for this kind of within your role. Is that something that you think others can do?
They can, but it's also hard because it's one of those things that you've got. For example, I had different departments. For example, I looked after. I knew that I could change certain fabrics. Focus on fabrics first, because that's like that's an easy win when it comes to changing into something much more sustainable. And I could change the factories quite easily into sustainable options. It didn't take a lot of effort, to be honest. When it was a case of communicating with the suppliers and figuring out what they could, because chances are as well, in many cases, they were already using sustainable like materials.
Right. You told me something quite shocking about e-auctions that are used as part of the purchasing practices for some brands.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about what an e-auction is? And
I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is something, like I said to you, that I basically tell these stories to anybody who will listen to me, because an e-auction is such an unethical way to do business. And every single retailer, supplier or brand that I have worked with or been involved with work on e-auctions. And basically the concept is it's what it is. It's an online auction, but instead of going up, you're going down. And for example, a buyer will have a best-selling shirt, for example, and she will send it to 7 different suppliers around the world, but she still can't, to get like cost prices and delivery dates. She still can't decide which price is the best or delivery option is the best. So she opens an e-auction, he or she opens an e-auction. And this will happen any time of the day. So I refuse to take part of them, which kind of got me into some trouble, but I just refused to be involved in that type of way of working. And it was a case where, 1 o'clock in the morning, my team had to do e-auction. And the mill has to be open in Cambodia, and everybody has to be awake looking at your cost sheet, and everyone's got an open cost sheet in front of them, even the buyer. And the first thing to always be to go is your labor cost, and then you have your fabric cost, and that gets lower and lower and lower until someone wins it by having the cheapest option. And something that I've never understood is how can someone, and that buyer will go and say, great, I've got it down by $1. How can that buyer be happy that they are physically taking money off of somebody else when it comes to the supply chain and someone's a fair wage? And this happens across. There was a case for a really popular discount supply chain retailer in the UK. They did a sustainable swim short that was made of plastic bottles. This got to e-auction and the order was placed for £1 per swim short. So how much is that worker being paid? I've seen the costing sheet and there's no labour in there.
Oh gosh. See,
This is apparently a normal way of working.
Yeah. So truly shocking, some of the practices that are allowed to go on. And I think a lot of it is just people don't make the connections between the dots half the time. So amazing that you're doing what you're doing and really showing business the way that things can be done. Can you tell us a little bit about in terms of technology and innovation, what are the main tools that you're using as a brand to improve your sustainability and to allow more transparency?
Yeah, so basically what we do at the moment is, I mean, we are a startup. We don't have, when it comes to putting huge amounts of money into technology, but what we have been doing, we've actually linked up with a startup which is actually based in Istanbul, and they monitor, so that we've kind of linked them up with our mills and also our farm. So it links from farm to mill, and then the idea now it goes from mill to factory, and we monitor the carbon use, the energy use, the chemical use, everything that we use, even natural chemicals, we monitor everything. So from that, we can see what our impact is at the moment, but we can also see what we can improve. Also, with every single piece that we do, I do like I call it a domino effect, which probably the name's flawed, but I do it in the way that, so whatever decision we make, you can see the impact, and I visually show that. And I work with the supplier and the supply chain on this. So we can see not just the transparency, but we can also see what we're doing. We're also working on trying to get into like a blockchain technology as well, so we can actually show all our certifications and everything's there. The interesting thing about when it comes to transparency, though, when it comes to using tech, is you're putting your own information on that. So obviously all our factories are all third-party audited, but obviously we use those certifications, but you also need to make sure those certifications are also real. Yeah.
But obviously it can be done. Thank you so much for that. Can you just tell everybody where they can find you, what your website is?
tbfuk.com.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I'm interested to see what you think of that, Jane. Obviously, you've worked a long time in the high street before your current role at MyWardrobeHQ, which is setting a completely different model around renting clothes. Yeah, you must have seen some things over the years.
I have seen some things over the years, but I think it's got an awful lot better than it was, but it's still got a very, very long way to go. And I'm very, very cynical actually in terms of the work that most of these big brands are doing. They talk about transparency, and transparency is good, and it's a great thing. However, for the consumer, it rarely means that they can actually see or find out how or where something is made, or anything meaningful for them. And I think that's so important. I think at the moment that consumers actually, it's so hard for them to actually have any real idea of whether something is sustainable or not. You know, if you go to the information part of most retailers' websites, they will tell you that they're ethical. And in fact, my 12-year-old niece told me the other day that it was fine for her to shop at Primark because it says in their information that they're very ethical. So yeah, I think it's got better, but there's still a hell of a long way to go.
Yeah, it is a minefield. But interesting, really you're working in a completely different disruptive section of the industry now. Can you tell us about why you've joined MyWardrobeHQ?
Yeah, it's called MyWardrobeHQ. It's a luxury rental business. I kind of, when I went I left the industry for a year, a couple of years ago, and kind of had to think about where I wanted to go, how I wanted to contribute to making fashion more sustainable in the best way possible, really. So I kind of started off looking at setting up some kind of platform to showcase ethical or sustainable brands. And the issue I found then was that I didn't find enough of them that I felt I could genuinely endorse. I didn't come across, to be frank, and if I had, perhaps then I would have changed my view. But at the time, I certainly felt that there were lots of brands around, but that I couldn't genuinely endorse their design credentials as well. And so for me, I guess rental became something that became a way of allowing me to and other people to still really enjoy fashion, because I do love fashion, but in a way that's sustainable. You know, that we can do it in a guilt-free manner, if you like, I suppose. For me, it kind of just answers all of those questions. And instead of one piece being bought and chucked away and never worn again, you know, each piece is bought and coveted and valued and worn again by another 30 people or so. It's made me personally look at the way that I use and value and wear fashion very, very differently. And I'm hoping that it will make other people do that too. At the moment, I think that the biggest challenge that we have right away is the lack of awareness that it actually is a viable alternative. I think certainly in the US at the moment, they have brands such as Rent the Runway, which has been established for at least 3 or 4 years, and has become for people in their 20s and 30s just something that they do every week. You know, they rent their work wardrobe from Rent the Runway. I think in this country, we've still got a long way to go to show people that actually there is an alternative to what they're currently doing.
Yeah, well, you made quite a splash at the British Fashion Awards in December when you took over the red carpet. So you, how many celebrities and fabulous people did you dress at that event?
I think we dressed about 65 influencers and sort of minor celebrities in my wardrobe outfits, and I have to tell you, it was an absolute nightmare logistically getting all those women to come in to find something that they really loved, and to make sure that they didn't all want the same thing or whatever. But it was amazing, but we kind of have to do that kind of thing as much as we possibly can, because we've got to get ourselves out there. We've got to show people that fashion rental isn't about renting kind of secondhand smelly clothes. Fashion rental is about renting the most incredible showcase pieces that you would never normally buy, looking amazing in them, and then handing them back for someone else to wear. So yes, I mean, that kind of event is really what we're almost focusing on at the moment, if you like.
So is it more special events?
For us, it is at the moment, yes, and I think it will develop. At the moment, what we're sort of saying is that if you're going to an event or a red carpet or a wedding in particular, and if you talk to certainly people in their 30s are often going to sort of 10 or 11 weddings a year, then that's kind of a key time for us. I do think though that once it becomes kind of much more acceptable, I think that people will start wearing it maybe for work events, and then also possibly just as a work wardrobe. I mean, ideally, that the way we're kind of hoping that this will sort of help to shift people's behavior a little bit, in that people will start to sort of perhaps buy the essential pieces that they need for their everyday, and will perhaps buy those in a much more considered manner, and will say, well, you know, does this go with everything else that I've got? Is it going to last me? Is it good quality? And then for events where they want to have some fun, they'll come along and rent from us, which kind of gets rid of the need for them to buy cheap fashion.
Yeah. So it's really educating people as much as anything, isn't it?
Very much so.
But I guess at the moment, obviously, events are on pause.
Yeah.
How have you used this time as a tech company? This must be quite precious time for you to be able to tinker with the website. How's that?
Well, it certainly is, because prior to the lockdown, I think we had a tech to-do list that was about 4 pages long, and every week we would sort of look at the top of it and sort of think, right, shit, what's the priority now? And of course, the priority changed all the time. So yes, we've been using this time to certainly to keep developing. The biggest thing that we've done is that we've managed to actually launch, or it's just literally about to be launched, both kids and activewear, which is again something that we've meant to do at the beginning because it was a really obvious thing to do, but we just didn't have the time to do that. You know, we had to focus on one thing, and that had to be women's wear. So we've managed to launch the kids and activewear. The other thing that we've managed to do, and this is been an issue for all fashion brands, is the Econ Photography. Because of course you're not allowed to, or we can't have photo shoots with models anymore because of the social distancing. What the team have been working with the retouchers very much on is taking a photograph of something either on a hanger or a mannequin, and then the retouching team is then sort of taking that ghost product and overlaying it onto a real model, so that we don't actually have to have the model there in the studio with us, which is fantastic. It means that we can upload images from other brands as well. So if there's people who are coming to put their inventory onto our site, we can photograph their product without having to actually have a photo shoot, which is great. So yeah, we've been very, very busy during this time. We've also got we've enabled Apple Pay and Google Pay. We've looked at new security measures. There's a lot of things, sort of small things that sound probably really boring, but have been going on in the background that we've had the opportunity to focus on now.
Yeah. When are you expecting the rental business to be back on track?
I have no idea. I don't know. We did hear something exciting yesterday. Somebody said that actually weddings, I think, are back on the agenda. Small weddings, I think a maximum of something like 10 people, I think. But it's a start, you know. I mean, I have to say we are actually still renting to a small number of people, and I can only assume that they're renting it to go on Zoom or conferences like this, maybe. I don't know. But I love the idea that they're still finding an opportunity to dress up and to have fun with fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, Zoom dinner parties are a big thing, aren't they? And cocktail parties.
Yeah.
So,
and it makes you feel so much better, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, for sure. And you talked a little bit about what you think people's wardrobes are going to look like in the future, and thinking about virtual clothes.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I thought about this when we first started using Zoom, because I was sort of going upstairs thinking, right, okay, I've got to get changed, I've got to look a certain way, you know, there's an expectation here. And I've been introduced, because I also work for what's called the London Fashion Fund, where we look for small fashion and fashion tech businesses in London that are environmentally and socially responsible. So I've come across one or two virtual clothing platforms, and I called all of them, and I just said, you have to try and you have to develop your tech so that next time I go on a Zoom call, I could wear, say, you know, a Chanel jacket or something and look absolutely fabulous. I mean, it would just be so amazing. It would be, you know, total democracy. We could all afford it. I would pay £10 to wear a Chanel jacket on my Zoom call. You know, if someone had that offer available to me now, I can tell you, I would definitely be wearing it.
Totally. I want that too. I need that right now. Back to MyWardrobeHQ, and can you just tell us a little more in detail about how it works on a peer-to-peer basis? Because I love the idea that, you know, I could be renting out my wardrobe and actually making a little bit of money on the side.
Yeah, well, I think it's such a wonderful idea, and it's actually very, very simple. The way we do it, because it's early days in terms of rental, so we need to generate trust both between our renters and our lenders. So we manage the whole process. So if you, for example, wanted to lend us your wardrobe, and Tamsin, we'd love to have it. What we would do is we would send our stylist round. She would come and have a look at your wardrobe. We would take the clothes away. We would then photograph them, post them. We would do all the fulfillment, all the deliveries, and the cleaning. And what we would send you would be a sort of a monthly dashboard, which shows you which of your pieces have been rented and for how long. And we would send you the remittance. Equally, if you want to rent someone's wardrobe, a lot of our lenders are quite happy, they're influencers, so that they're quite happy to have their names up there. So if there's a particular influencer whose style that you really like, you can go onto the site and you can rent her wardrobe. It's really, really simple for both the lender and for the renter. And I think at this stage, it probably has to be really, really simple, because otherwise, you know, it's going to take a while for people to really accept it as an alternative, I think.
Right. And does this make sense for luxury fashion houses as well? How do they fit into this rental model? How do they monetize it?
Well, I've had a lot of conversations both with sort of the smaller luxury houses who are much more open to it. The big guys haven't really come around to it yet, but some of the smaller houses are interested in it, because if you think about it, they will normally wholesale their collection to one of the big department stores or one of the big online retailers, and they'll sell it at a wholesale price, which is 30% of the retail price. Now, they could equally give us the stock, and we could rent it out maybe 2 or 3 times. And after a couple of rentals, they've made the same price as they were going to make on their wholesale price. So from their point of view, it's another avenue. It's another customer base. Also, the difference is that generally the big department stores who are taking luxury designer fashion will play safe. So they'll go with, you know, the black dress or whatever. We're a rental agency, so it's completely the opposite. So, you know, if you were going to buy something, you'd buy it in navy. If you were going to rent it, you'd probably rent it in yellow. So we will kind of take their real showcase pieces. And I've actually talked to some young designers who are saying they're quite interested in the idea of just putting together a collection for rental, so that they can focus on it being really kind of over the top in terms of styling, but also making sure that the quality is there, and that there's longevity, you know, that it will last for however many washings or cleanings that it needs. So I think there's opportunities for every level of the market.
Really interesting. I mean, things are really going to have to change, as we're talking about, over the next 10 years. And this is obviously, you know, still quite a fledgling part of the industry. Thanks so much for that, Jane. There are quite a few questions coming through, but we're going to be having a question and answer session at 3 o'clock. So I will be putting some of those questions to the panel then. So if I may, I'm just going to carry on and move on to you, Dax. Thanks so much for joining. So listening to what Jane's saying, there are a lot of new kind of ways of showing fashion and interacting with fashion coming forward. So as a member of the British Fashion Council's Institute for Positive Fashion, what effect do you think the different ways of interacting with fashion are going to have? So it's not just rentals, it's resale, swapping. How does that fit into something like London Fashion Week going forwards?
Thank you, Tamsin. I mean, I'm a little bit more optimistic than Jane. I mean, I think she's right that there is a long way to go. The British Fashion Council launched a new positive fashion platform yesterday. If you look up positive fashion, you can find it quite easily. And this new platform will evolve during the course of this year. The platform is there to support research and innovation and industry collaboration, to support more resilience, more fairness, and more circularity in the fashion sector. To answer your question, Tamsin, I mean, we talk about the 3 M's in the positive fashion team. So one is new materials are coming onto the scene, which is great news. But they're at the fringe at the moment, and they're starting to come into the mainstream. So whether it's better cotton or eco-nile or pineapple leather or tencel or, you know, all those sorts of incredible materials, I think we'll see them coming into the mainstream because they need to be more easily accessible. They need to be in the right quality, the right quantity, the right price. So I think what's quite exciting is these new kinds of responsible and alternative materials entering the mainstream. The other one is models, which is the great thing that Frankie and Jane are doing. And yes, we need to see this positive disruption in the marketplace. And how do the established retailers and the established players try and test out new kind of rental offers and new kinds of approaches? And I think that's exciting. And I think the third M is manufacturing that somehow also aligns with new circular techniques, manufacturing that can remake products and components. Because as I think you said in terms of in the introduction, in this lockdown, there's this huge surplus now that retailers have of unsold stock. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? So it has at least triggered all kinds of circular economy thinking. And the other thing that the Positive Fashion team has been experiencing in our sort of rounds, we've been talking to various players, various designers in this sector, is that requires a reskilling, because to unpick a garment and to make it into something else, to disassemble some sort of fashion accessory and make it into something else is an art form. It's a real skill, and there are lots of designers doing that. But to scale that up, we need to reskill the workforce, the product development teams, the designer community across the sector. So I think what's coming is a change in these three M's: new materials entering the mainstream, new models disrupting the marketplace and getting us to behave more in circular ways like MyWardrobe, and new manufacturing techniques that align with circularity. And just one more thing to say is we're not just, we need to manage waste in the short term, but designers really need to design out waste in the long term. It's not just a quick fix we need to look at. We need to look at how do we get rid of waste? How do we design it out?
So how's the BFC supporting designers in this? As you say, circularity requires a whole new set of skills. There are a lot of designers coming out of colleges at the moment completely focused on areas around upcycling. Are there tangible things that are being done to help support those designers?
To be honest, Tamsin, I think that's to be worked out. I think, first of all, we've convened various designers. I mean, the people we all recognize, like Christopher Rayburn and EVL Denim, these incredible designers who do take materials and remake them into, luxury fashion items, which is just an incredible process. And what they do is they build an ecosystem around them of getting, hold of the right kinds of materials, having the right skill sets around them, having the right workshop and so on. And I think what we're beginning to understand is that they have a huge know-how, which we need to somehow share with designers who are emerging, who are coming out of college. And so we're starting to look at how do we share that know-how? Is it going to be courses tying up with the London College of Fashion? Is it going to be sort of teaming up with these designers who are practicing these techniques already, who can share them in their workshops? So I think there's all sorts of things to look ahead into courses and workshops and really trying to reskill for the future.
I mean, it seems as though this is leading into a whole rethinking as well about fashion education and how we're teaching our students going forward. Do you think the British Fashion Council should be incentivizing brands more with rewards or special attention to designers who are actively focusing on circularity and sustainable innovation?
I think incentives could well be a part of it. I mean, the other thing to say is the change is happening already, isn't it? I mean, I think the lockdown has meant that people in their homes, they're starting to reflect what really matters to them and their families. And that means brands and retailers have to respond to that reflection. We have to in future roll out far more considered products, products that somehow demonstrate that they do support people in the supply chain, that they support the wider community, that they support the natural world. So I don't know. I think change is coming, and when you look at a part of that considered approach, if you think about Gucci and other brands now are going seasonless. It's the change we all want to see slowing down of fashion, a more considered approach. You know, seasonal fashion is so wasteful, isn't it? So precarious. We can't predict the weather, especially in times of climate change. So the idea of brands going more seasonless and more brands sort of stepping off the fast pace of fashion, you know, that changes here, isn't it? And I think what the BFC is trying to do is build on that change, build on the momentum, work out what the big players need to do and how they need to adapt to these new times, and support the smaller designers to making sure they're more aware of all the resources around them and all the sort of know-how that they need. So I think incentives will be one thing that will be coming down the pipeline, but also just building on recognizing the change that's already happening and building on that momentum.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thanks for your optimism, Dax. We certainly need it. I'm going to ask all of you, starting with Dax, just one question. So what, if you think the fashion industry has the ability to transform and change itself for the better, what tangible action would you recommend to trigger real lasting change that will make a difference in the next 10 years, Dax?
I think first of all, look around you, you know, recognize that actually change is here. The lockdown has meant more reflection. It requires a more considered approach. There's no doubt about that. And if you look at brands going seasonless, change is here. I mean, I will go back to the 3Ms, you know, look at the new materials out there, get a hold of those materials and learn how to work with them. Think about the new business models, the great things that Frankie and Jane are doing that are disrupting the marketplace, and get onto that and try and test out new approaches, and then think about new manufacturing techniques. So I think get with the program, really. The change is here, and get on with it.
Yeah, amazing. Frankie? Oh, I think you're on mute, Frankie.
Sorry. When it comes to working with our supply chains, and actually as designers, majority of designers have never stepped foot in a factory. So it's understanding, actually working with the actual people that are going to produce your garments, and understanding the impact on the environment. And yeah, like Dax says, change is here. And as customers, you vote with your wallet. You vote with what type of life you want to have now. And that's what we say. Yeah.
Sure. Jane, the last words with you.
Okay. Yeah, I think legislation is necessary. I know that's a dirty word, but I really do. I was talking to a friend recently about the sugar tax, for example. So you could have some sort of climate tax or sustainability tax or whatever. And she said the thing about a sugar tax is that not that it raises the price of sugary things at the till for people who can't afford it. What it does is it forces the big producers to cut sugar out of their process as much as they possibly can, so that they don't have to pay the tax. And that's what needs to happen to stop these big retailers doing what they're currently doing. That's my view. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Oh, I think you're on mute, Tamsin.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. We do need legislation around this. Thanks, Jane. Thanks so much, amazing panelists, Frankie, Dax, and Jane. And over to Janet. Thank you very much.
Tamsin, Frankie, Jane, and Dax, that was the most inspiring session, one of the best I've seen today. Thank you so much. So it seems that here we have a fashion industry that wants to see change. We have an industry that has a plan for change, and we have a pandemic that has made people think more about change. And what a wonderful thought that the British Fashion Council are already taking moves in this direction with the launch of their Institute for Positive Fashion. So it's interesting that they are here. British Fashion Council have a booth in the expo, and I'm sure they'll be able to give you more information about this new movement that they're creating. But just for now, I wanted to let you know, first of all, that there's going to be a Q&A for those of you with a priority pass to actually ask our panelists more from 3 o'clock today, and another session at 3 o'clock today here on this stage. For those of you who are interested in finding out about the new tools of engagement, voice, AR, chat box, and AI. And actually, to send us out from this session, we've got a video that I think will be very pertinent to what's already been talked about on stage. It's been put together for us by UKRI, and it's showing a sustainable fashion case study featuring the work of Future Fashion Factory and the business of fashion textiles and technology, which I think is at Leeds University. So let's play that first. I think it's about 5 minutes long, and then wait for the next session or go to Q&A.
Necessity is the mother of invention, then we're going to see some very necessary changes in our industry, which we all welcome. We're already seeing new fibres coming to market at a pace that we've never seen before, and that are really starting to address the sustainability challenges in front of us. We use our multi-brand platform to help new and exciting brands get to market more quickly and to adopt sustainable practices as they grow. Long term, we're going to be manufacturing clothing in a very different way to the way we do now. If we don't move together and adopt new industry norms as a sector rather than individual businesses, we won't see the change at the pace that is necessary for the environment. So bringing the research and development conversation into the business environment, we can really accelerate the pace of change.
The fashion textile technology sector covers such an enormous, wide, broad range of ground. There's work around textiles, there's work around innovation in store, there's work online, there's work around mobile, there's work around engagement, and all of these areas taken together are big and huge. There's been a lot of conversation happening about the death of retail, and I think that's very, very wide of the point. I mean, the reality is that FTT, these kind of technologies will support an entire broad range of different types of channels. One of those is going to be physical. Physical is absolutely not dead at all. The challenge is, of course, trying to take very nascent technology, which operates in very niche markets, and make it scalable. And I think a lot of this technology isn't yet scalable. And once it starts to become scalable, once it starts generating capital and generating money, then I think we're into a much more interesting area. The other issue is the trend in technology today is increasingly moving towards combinatory forms of technology, where we take, for example, AR and AI and data information and combine that with an engagement piece. For example, areas around hyper-personalization and trend, and taking physical shape of people and colours and feeding into that lifestyle data from the magazines and the media that they read, and combining that with environmental data around whether it's sunny or rainy. And rather than a lot of FTT technology sitting in isolation, they need to come together. And if they come together, then you get that 1 + 1 = 3, and the impact becomes far more powerful. What we offer up is our experience to SMEs and apprenticeships and interns and students, and help them. We've been through it ourselves, and we can offer some of that knowledge back to them, but we also get stuff in return. We get creativity, we get innovation, we get fresh thinking, so it really is an equal partnership.
The fashion industry is worth £32 billion to the UK economy.
Around 50 billion if you take into account all the associated businesses.
And if you take what we all spend on the high street, it's somewhere north of 70 billion.
It's a growing industry too, and it's a very large exporter.
And employs over 890,000 people.
So pretty big numbers.
And therefore it's a major contributor to UK GDP.
Future Fashion Factory is about driving innovation and digitalisation throughout the industrial processes in the UK textile and clothing businesses.
Bringing a range of partners from across the UK together.
It's a conversation, it's working collectively.
What we're trying to do is accelerate the growth of the high-value luxury textile and fashion design industry, because that's what's designed and manufactured in the UK.
It gives platforms to young designers, make those connections.
Working very closely to start looking at the industry problems and bringing quick solutions.
Looking at sustainability,
turnaround times, lead times,
circularity, looking at how fashion is sold.
We have full supply chain participation.
We've got a range of different universities involved, all bringing very different aspects.
As a result, we have the best of all of those skills and expertise being combined.
It couldn't be a better opportunity to leverage everything that Yorkshire has to offer.
Yorkshire produces some of the finest cloth and some of the most high-end and expensive garments you've seen.
And they supply, obviously, leading brands worldwide: Prada, Chanel,
Erdem,
Gucci,
Christopher Kane,
Burberry,
America Transu,
Paul Smith.
And we've got some companies that are producing very, very high-end technical textiles here in Yorkshire. So it's a place of innovation as well as a place of heritage.
For us, we are very Yorkshire-based, but we are a very London-based company as well. Our iconic imagery is the scarlet uniforms outside Buckingham Palace.
That outward connectivity nationally and internationally is fundamental to the success of our programme.
There is new technology that's coming through that would allow us to maybe have a slicker process, a better process, more flexibility.
If a fashion designer is in China, but the manufacturer is in Yorkshire, how do we get that connection to work much more closely without all having to jump on planes, talk to each other, get on another plane, wait for the product to be delivered by boat?
Improve our ability to communicate the incommunicable, aesthetics, tactile properties, accurately, effectively and quickly, let's say over the internet, in an immersive environment, so the customer feels that they have the fabric in their hand.
cutting edge technology, and then the really super traditional things like the way the cloth's made. I love it, the fact that you've got that kind of total fusion of two worlds.
So new technology and innovation is really critical to keep moving the industry forward while leveraging our heritage.
In terms of the timing, it really couldn't be better.
I think people now have begun to understand that by coming together, we'll end up having a much better industry.
Sharing experience, sharing knowledge.
And some of the fabulous support we've got from leading names and brands.
It all is creating this kind of change, something new and exciting.
To maximise that designed and made in the UK ethic and to really capitalise on it.
Fashion is changing fast.
Fashion is greener.
Being smarter.
Being innovative.
Building on heritage.
Provenance.
Cutting lead times.
Adding value.
The Future Fashion Factory.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.